Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. On last episode, what I talked about were the stages of wealth. And we really talked about 1 and 2, and that was kind of an introduction. And so just so in case you haven't heard that one or we need a recap, this idea of stage 1. So what is stage 1 of wealth? What does that look like? What does that mean? Stage 1 looks like the idea of this constant need for money. We have this belief that if we could just have more money, if we then we could have all our dreams come true, then we could retire, then we could have the life we want. And so in stage 1 thinking, the thinking is that you're kind of racing and chasing this goal for wealth. And you're just thinking, hey, look, if I could just accumulate more, if I could work harder, if I could get more money, then everything would change, right? We go to the store and we buy that lucky lottery ticket, right? And we're just like, hey, if this could be the ticket, right? Think about that. Just imagine in your hand like the lottery. We've all done it, by the way, right? It's like Saturday night and it's $264 million drawing, right? And you've got this ticket in your hand and you're thinking, if this was the ticket, everything in my life would change, right? And then I would go off and, like pixie dust would fall from the sky and life would be great. And, everything would be, every day I'd have from this point forward is going to be successful and happy. And if that was the case, by the way, there wouldn't be so many miserable billionaires. There wouldn't be so many people that win the lottery and become suicidal, right? Or lose it all. So we'll talk more about that. But stage 1 is this idea that, if I could just get more money. Now that sounds pretty tough, but I would also say on the positive side of stage 1 is this idea that, hey, I'm still a dreamer, right? I mean, there's something this tangible and it's beautiful, honestly. Beautiful is a great word for it, about being a dreamer. This country was founded on the idea of dreaming and coming over here and creating a life. And in fact, if you look at it, look at immigrants. I mean, why do immigrants come to this country and become wildly successful? And yet people here that are living here every day and grew up in wealth and had every opportunity end up failing and not doing well, right? It's the idea of dreaming. Sometimes when you live here and you grew up in no matter how you want to look at it, we're a wealthy climate, where we're a wealthy culture. And so you had every opportunity given to you, and yet you don't dream, right? If I ask, believe it or not, I ask 100 doctors, what's your vision? What's your dream? Most of them can't even tell me. The question is, what's your dream, right? That stage 1 thing is the idea of at least I've got a dream. At least, by the way, if you're listening to this and you don't have a dream, go get one. I would encourage you to sit down in a journal or somewhere and write down, what does life look like in 5 years, in 3 years, 12 months, and what would need to happen, and right? And that's why I always tell people, once we get a solid vision, a dream, then what ends up happening is on the left side of, let's say, assume you took a piece of paper and you just drew a line down the middle. On the left side, you would have, this gets me closer, and then the right side says further. If it gets you closer, then you do it. If it gets you further, you don't, right? But most people, you have to start off with a dream. So at least stage 1 thinking is this idea of being a dreamer and wanting to dream, wanting to create, wanting to have more, be more, right? It's kind of the idea of wealth, is that you're going to become more and build more. And so I think that's such a powerful, powerful thing. So that's stage 1 thinking, right? So stage 1, the downside is that you believe that you've been sold on this fallacy that all you have to do is get more money and then you'll be happy, right? Then you'll have it all. But the positive side is that, hey, at the same time I dream, I think, I create, right? These are the people that build entrepreneurship, right? That build companies, that build dental practices that are constantly growing. That's stage 1 thinking. Stage 2 thinking, to me, is a little bit of a tragedy. Stage 2 thinking is when you've had enough of the financial advisors and everybody else sell you on this concept of retirement. And so you get forget your dreams. By the way, you take your dream and you throw it away. And all the things you aspired to, all those things that you would motivate kids to become and do and create, you've given those things up. You gave up being really wealthy. You gave up making major impact. You gave up on generational wealth and leaving money to churches and and to colleges and to make a difference in people's life. As I'm recording this right now, there's a billionaire at Morehouse University who just paid off everyone's student loans at the entire graduating senior class, right? Do you think he's wealthy, or do you think he's focused on retirement, right? This is a person who wanted the ability. Remember, he went to Morehouse, and his idea was eventually someday I'm going to be able to go back, and it's a dream to him, is to go back and pay off everyone's student loans that's graduating. What a powerful thing to do. See, in stage 2 thinking, you give that up. You walk away from that idea and that mindset. You completely just put it on the shelf because you go, well, I'm not going to impact anybody. And I hope your number one goal is to not outlive your money. I think it's a great tragedy. I think people get sold on this idea of not outliving their money, and they just go, well, I guess if I as long as I have enough money to live until I die. That's a sad thing to me. I call the stage 2 the settler. This is the person who's settled. All their dreams and aspirations and hopes and all those things of making impact, they've given up. And the worst part is they've been sold something so that somebody else could get wealthy. They've been sold by financial advisors, and they've been sold by other people that their life dream is to just retire. Can I tell you the truth? The number one cause of death in America is retirement. Like, let that sink in. And people want it so bad. They want to just stop, and look at the mortality rate of people that just stop. See, because you'd have to ignore one of the greatest desires of the human mind and the human body, and that's growth. See, when you stop growing, you start dying. And that's both mentally and physically. The physical body, when it's told, I have nothing left to do on this planet, it shuts down. Don't shut down. Don't be sold a dream of shutting down. Don't be motivated by the idea of just shutting down and stopping and quitting. It's a strong word, but it's such a loser approach. To give up? To quit? I mean, there's stories like people like Colonel Sanders, who didn't even hit it big until he was 83 years old, right? Kentucky Fried Chicken, by the way, was like 83 years old, because even in his 80s, he never gave up. Some of you listening to this are in your 30s, and you're thinking, well, if I could just retire. That's such a sad way to look at things versus I want to build, I want to grow, I want to create, I want to move. And if there's any stage that we talk about that I want to move you out of, it's stage 2 thinking, because it's not great thinking. It's kind of a settler's mindset. And hey, listen, you might be listening to this going, well, I don't care what he says. I just want to retire. I might not be for you. And that's okay, right? There's plenty of financial advisors be more than happy to take your money and sell you on the pipe dream of being able to sit at home all day and watch Fox News. Look, that's okay. That might be your whole desire in life might be to stare at the walls. Hey, those are not the people I'm talking to. So if you're listening to this right now and you just, hey, Eric, I just want to be able to stare at the walls. Hey, I'm probably not the guy. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm not for you. That doesn't mean you can't pull back. So don't think about that when you hear about that. Don't think you can't pull back. It doesn't mean you can't pull back. It doesn't mean you can't go do what you want. And in fact, I would argue the opposite. I would argue that when you get to the place where you're creating, you're scaling, you're building, you get to pull back more. But your assets and income keep going up every year. And so you have more of the ability to travel. You have more of the ability to do that. You have more ability to do the things you've always wanted to, but yet you keep your brain active. Just because you can stop working. I mean, I don't have to do this podcast. I don't have to do this now. I do it because I care. I do it because the fact that I need people to reach out to people and help them wake people up and say, hey, look, this isn't what I went to school, dental school for. This isn't why. Imagine looking at your kids and trying to inspire them by saying, hey, Johnny, Susie, I hope someday you can work hard enough so that you don't outlive your money. Do we tell kids that? Do we tell kids, I hope someday that you work hard enough so that you don't outlive your money? Or do we tell them that they can be what? Anything they want to be. We tell them to go build and create and to move mountains. And if they put their attitude and their emphasis and their passion and their drive and their heart, they can literally have everything they've ever wanted. But hell, that's the American dream, right? To build and create and to become. So I'm not a big stage 2 fan. Right? I'm going to move you out of there quickly. And on this podcast, let's talk about stage 3. What is stage 3? So like I said, we're going to get in the book. I mean, there's a whole book coming out where I'm going to really get all the strategies on how to move out of each stage. Let's talk about stage 3. See, stage 3 is when you start realizing, stage 1, you still think you can work harder to create wealth. The harder you work, the quicker you'll get there. In stage 3, you realize it's not about how hard you work, because even if there's something called Parkinson's Law, which means that as revenue goes up, well, so do expenses, okay? Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So as revenue goes up, you start making more money as a dentist. You start looking at your house and you look over and you go, well, that's not the kind of house that I can put my type of family in. And so then you move over by the country club. And then you got to be part of the country club, because certainly that that would make sense. And then you start going to the country club, and there's an extra $2,000 a month. And then you, need to go on vacation, and then before you know it, it's the nicer vacation, and then it's the flying first class, and then it gets eaten up because you increase your standard of living. It's like the individual who first starts flying in the back of the jet coach, and then eventually one day they say, hey, look, I really shouldn't be sitting in coach, and they move to comfort, and they move to first class, and they move private, and then they need a bigger jet. And I just saw Drake. I don't know if you're listening to this, know who Drake is, but he just bought his own 757 jet, right? I mean, so look, there's as you create, so income gets eaten. I think it's important for you to understand that concept. Like, as your income goes up, so do your expenses, and you need to know that. There are, I would say, about 5% of the population are just really good savers. What I mean by that is they put aside a sizable amount of their money. They put that aside, but the vast majority of people spend what they make. Their income gets wiped away. Okay, Eric, then what's the key? I mean, if you're telling me as my income goes up, I'm going to keep spending more, then what's the key? Well, the key is to accumulate assets. See, it's only through the accumulation of assets that you actually start growing. You start accumulating assets. You start, hey, I've got a piece of real estate. That piece of real estate pays me $5,000 a month. Hey, that's the equivalent of over $1 million in an investment account. Hey, right, I've got a sizable brokerage account portfolio. That's providing me income, right? Maybe you have another business and that business is providing income. Maybe you look at your dental practice, which is the most important thing, less as an income stream and more as a stream of money that's utilized to buy assets that create more money. Now, when you write that down for a second, I want you to hear that again. I utilize my dental practice to create revenue that buys assets, and those assets provide me income. See, that's the key. And so many dentists just live off the income. And as the revenues go up, the dentist takes more of the money. And in fact, when I look at financials for dental practices, quite often dentists will say, well, the practice is not profitable or there's no cash. And I look at how much the dentist is taking. And I say, no, actually, the practice is doing quite well. You're just taking home all the extra. So when you bought a business, you bought into being a business owner. And part of that is, as a business owner, you utilize the income, the revenue, to buy other assets that produce income. So stage 3 is getting really good at obtaining assets. The idea of, hey, I need to gain assets. If I'm going to create wealth, what I need to do is I need to gain more assets. The goal is to create passive income. By the way, that's what your retirement person's trying to do for you, by the way, is to get enough passive income that allows you to be able to retire. That's the game. The problem with their game is that the way they make sure you have enough to retire is that they actually eat the asset every year in retirement, so that by the time you've passed, there's nothing left. And the way I'm saying is go acquire assets that increase in value every year. This is why I say I have a problem with the financial advisor who says, don't worry, we'll put money in a 401k because in retirement, your income will go down. What? My income will go down? Yeah, don't worry, because your assets will go down too. And they're literally putting you something called the death spiral, which I talked about in an earlier podcast. I don't want that for you. So listening to this, you have to go, okay, stage 3 thinking is I got to get this. I got to buy assets. I got to get plenty of assets. I got to actually grow my wealth by creating assets. By the way, just as a side note, as I'm recording this, the economy is doing really well. Like when I say really well, it's doing really well. So what does that mean? It means you got to be smarter than the economy. You have to be smarter than the economy. What do you mean by smarter than the economy? You have to realize it's going back down, right? The problem with great economies is that people spend in great economies like that money will always be there. They take on loans like that money will always be there. They have this fallacy and this belief they hire like the money will always be there, and they never put reserves aside. And the problem with that is when the economy goes to hell, and by the way, it will go back down, they don't have any money left to buy assets. Think about that. When would you buy assets? Wealthy people buy low and they sell high. So if you really want to get good at stage 3 thinking, what you need to think about is in a great economy, I don't purchase assets, but I hold reserves and I get ready. I obviously surpass inflation with wherever I put it, but I hold on to capital so that when everything goes on sale, I was just talking to my team this morning and I said, remember, when everybody contracts, we expand. That's the idea of really smart thinking, to expand when the rest of the market's contracting, okay? Because the rest of your competitors, dental offices, I'm telling you, when the economy goes down, what do you think will happen to dental marketing? It'll crash. That's when you expand your marketing, right? When the dental market goes down and people lose 20% of revenue, people pull back on services. You should expand services. So this idea of we want to get ready for stage 3 thinking, which is, hey, stage 3 thinking is I got to get ready to buy assets. It's not how much money I make. The money I make, I will spend anyhow. What I need to do is get really good at buying assets. In a great economy, I save money, I accumulate wealth, right? Money, liquid cash, so that in a down economy, I can go buy assets. Now, we're leaving one component out, which is that it takes discipline, right? It takes discipline to do that. To not go buy the next piece of equipment, to not go buy the next thing just because it's shiny, but to say, I'll go buy it when everybody else is selling it for pennies on the dollar. See, the Rockefellers of the world, the Vanderbilts of the world got wealthy in down economies. You get wealthy in down economies. That's when you grow crazy wealth. That's when you get like 1,000% returns. So stage 3 thinking is, hey, I've got to be ready. If I'm going to be really smart and create wealth, one of the things I've got to do is I've got to get ready to go ahead and purchase assets. Now, I want to be buying assets, by the way, but I'm just letting you know timing of assets matters too. You can't wait on the sidelines forever. We got to get money rolling and we got to start getting things going. But it's no different than in a stock portfolio dollar cost averaging. Yes, some things you're going to buy down and sometimes you're going to buy up and sometimes you're going to buy them down. And it will average out somewhere in the middle. But the majority of your true acquisitions should come in a down economy. And so you got to be ready. And matter of fact, they call it the winter. It's a financial winter, but I want you to get excited about those times. Don't get frustrated. When you talk to all your dental friends and they're frustrated because the economy is going down and revenue is going down by 20, 30%, I want you to get excited. I want you to be like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. When everybody else is looking at the market going, this is the worst case scenario, you go, this is the best case scenario. That's how you create wealth. That's how you get really, really wealthy. Now, what's the problem with that? I'm like, okay, Eric, that sounds all great. So I get this. Stage 1 thinking is I think I can just keep creating more and more income and more income and more income and more income. And if I get enough income, then eventually I'll become wealthy. Well, it's not true. It's not true. You'll never have enough money. You'll never accumulate enough money. It'll just never happen doing it that way. You'll never be able to, your income, You'll always spend your income. You'll never be able to put enough aside to get there. Does that make sense? Stage 2 is giving up and saying, that's fine, well, I'll just settle. Don't settle, create, grow, expand. Stage 3, I gotta buy assets. I wanna get ready. Okay, I got that. It's not about my income. It's not about retirement. It's about going to get assets. It's about utilizing my current income to go buy assets, which will then yield me passive cash flow that will allow me to have the kind of lifestyle I want, assets that go up every year and income that goes up every year. That's what I want. I want to mostly buy those in a down economy, and that's how I start to kind of build this wealth and get really, really wealthy. I mean, how many multi-million-dollar homes were sold in 2009 for $300,000? I mean, I saw a home. I literally drove by a house yesterday that's got to be a 14,000 square foot home with these beautiful gates and rolling driveway and everything, and they bought it for like $400,000 in a down economy. It's a beautiful home. Now you look at the dang thing's worth probably $4.5 million. But you got to position yourself. Now, I also want you to understand, when you start buying assets, when you start doing well, when you start accumulating, the negative of stage 3 thinking is ego. See, when you start doing well and you start accumulating assets, you start having passive income, the first thing you start doing is going, I got this. Like, look how smart I am. Look at the real estate that I've got. Look at what I've created. Look what I've built. Look at all the money I've got. That's a mistake. That's the first trap on stage 3 thinking. Go back to 2008. How many real estate entrepreneurs were wealthy and had passive income and had houses they were flipping and then how many of them went from stage 3 to stage 1 real quick? So one of the downfalls of stage 3 is ego. And we're going to talk more and more on how to protect yourself and how to put sources around you so that doesn't happen. So that even when a down economy happens, you're prepared and that you don't lose your shirt. In case you get sued, in case something happens, how do you protect yourself? I'm going to also tell you a truth. As you start gaining assets, you also gain a target. Okay? As you start doing well, people start to come after you. You've got to protect yourself. So stage 3 thinking, you've got to become more sophisticated in your thinking. Now you got to think about that on the front side so you can get to stage 3, but then as you get into stage 3, you've got to put a team of people around you that can protect you, that can insulate you from down economies and from dangerous people. I hope you've enjoyed this. Start thinking about your thinking. Where are you at now? Where do you need to go next? What's the next move? Like I said, we're going to break these out in greater length, but I think you need to think about this and what's your next move. Next podcast, we'll start unwinding stage 4, and then we'll get to stage 5. Hope you guys have enjoyed. If you enjoyed this, it takes 1 second to hit subscribe. Hit subscribe. Be notified when the next podcast comes out. Don't wait around. It's interesting. People sometimes wait around for a good idea to hit them. Rarely does an idea wake you up in the middle of the night, right? You got to be ready and positioned for things to come your way. Hit subscribe. Get a great idea. It can change your life. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.